Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode review of the Book of the Mandalorian. Today we are taking a look at Chapter 6, From the Desert Comes a Stranger. And yes, I did purposefully call this the Book of the Mandalorian and not the Book of Boba Fett, because at this point, that's what this show is. And I have so many conflicting feelings about it. But so, I'm just going to jump right into the whole where's Boba in his own show thing, and he's kind of picking up where I left off last week. And I'm going to really quickly reiterate that I'm glad I wait a couple days to do these and not just doing it immediately with my initial gut reactions. And to think it through a little bit. Because I really enjoyed this week's episode, but again, my initial thought was kind of negative. It's like, okay, well, at least Boba was in this episode, but he didn't even say anything. He just stood there while Fennec Shan said everything. And even then, he was only on screen for maybe 45 seconds. So it was like, yeah, good episode of another show, but the Book of Boba Fett, it wasn't a good episode. So yeah, I'm gonna say my piece on it real quick, and then I'm gonna move on to because I will admit that the way they've kind of positioned themselves, I think they've made a mistake. That doesn't make the show bad per se, but I think they've made a slight mistake in terms of maybe just pure marketing, which I think is what a lot of this boils down to. So for me, I really liked this episode. It was a really good episode. I actually cried during this episode at a very specific point, which I'll get to in a little bit. But this was good Star Wars. This was good Star Wars. But if you're looking at this as a show about Boba Fett, I don't think this was a good episode of that. But I don't really think that matters, because with Star Wars nowadays, it's kind of hard to get, it's easy to get bogged down a little bit with, you can really kind of say this about anything that kind of has a big overarching kind of story, like the MCU even. But it's kind of easy to get bogged down into looking at, well, this is X's property, this is X's show, this is X's movie. And it's strange that Y character seemed to have been better handled than X character when the show or movie or whatever is named after them. I kind of feel that way about Spider-Man No Way Home a little bit. Strange, and it's like, it's not for me to go into right now, but I feel like in some ways they really kind of forced some things into place, and yeah, it's still an enjoyable movie, but it's like, is this really the direction this story was going from the very beginning? Because this feels like we've suddenly taken a left turn, and I enjoyed it, but I didn't enjoy it at the same time. It's all complicated, and Book of Boba Fett, I think, is a very, very similar thing here, where if you're looking at this through the very, very narrow lens of this is a TV show about Boba Fett, then these last two episodes are very, very confusing because of their lack of involvement of the title character. And of course, I'm going to reserve final judgment until we see the next episode and next season, or if there even is going to be a next season or what have you, stuff I'll get into later. But looking at it through the broader lens of what is the first, when we're getting too caught up in what is the name of the show? Is it The Mandalorian or is it The Book of Boba Fett? Neither of those things really matter, because what is in front of both of those titles? Star Wars. This is Star Wars, and then The Mandalorian or The Clone Wars or The Book of Boba Fett or Rebels or The Rise of Skywalker or Attack of the Clones or what have you, all those separate titles, Jedi Fallen Order, the comics, whatever, all those separate little nuggets, the separate stories, all exist underneath the banner of Star Wars, and each of these stories is designed to contribute to the overall narrative of the entire saga, which, that may be, and the saga of not the Skywalker, a lot of it, obviously is contributing to the Skywalker saga, but other things contribute to the overall saga of the Star Wars rather than just the Skywalker saga. Because at this point, I think we can maybe kind of say that we've kind of gotten around to George Lucas's kind of, maybe not initial vision, but his original, kind of maybe his intention for the original title. Because, of course, the original title was, The Adventures of Luke Starkiller, as taken from the Journal of the Whills, Saga 1, The Star Wars. That was his original very, very lengthy title, and it eventually got shortened down just to Star Wars. So looking at it as, anything that comes out from the brand contributing to the story of the Star Wars, each show or movie or comic or what have you, it's all contributing to that. And we can argue the quality of those things that come out, like the sequel trilogy or the prequels, or the made-for-TV Ewok movies from the 80s or whatever. But they all exist to kind of contribute to the story and also, yes, make money. But, so all of that to say is that while these two episodes don't necessarily, at least right now, without knowing the way the finale is going to wrap up next week or anything, just as it seems right now, as of this recording, 2 days after the episode has premiered on Disney+, while these episodes don't seem to be adding too much to the story of Boba Fett, they are adding to the story of Star Wars as a whole, and not just for the Mandalorian story with Din Djarin and Grogu, but also to the story of Luke Skywalker, to the story of Ahsoka Tano, to the story of Tatooine as a planet and the culture and the wider world of the criminal empire, to Cobb Vanth, all of these a lot of different characters that have shown up in a lot of different things, and they aren't restricted to just this one show. If 98% of all these characters appeared in the Book of Boba Fett on their own, and they didn't appear anywhere else, and then suddenly we have 2 episodes where, oh, hey, now we're following Din Djarin. We don't get to see any of these other characters that were introduced in this show, so we know nothing about them almost. Then I think we have serious, serious problems. But that's the thing. There are characters that premiered in this show, are exclusive to this show as of now, but then most of the other characters have appeared in at least one other form of media. Black Chrysanthemum, he originated from the comics, from the canon Marvel comics that started in 2015. Mr. You-Know-Who, Cad Bane, Bounty Hunter, showing up at the end. He originated from the Clone Wars. Same for Ahsoka. Luke and R2, they originate from A New Hope, all the way back in 1977 when the entire thing started in the first place. So, considering the kind of gigantic, sprawling, intergalactic web of storytelling that we have here for what Star Wars is, I can positively say that I like this episode because it contributed well to the overall franchise, and I appreciate it for that, even if Boba Fett did take a back seat in his own show. Because at this point, I don't really know if this is his own show, even though his name is on it. And this is what I was this is what I was alluding to a minute ago, in that I think they've made a mistake here when it just comes to branding, to marketing, what have you, where they shouldn't have called this show The Book of Boba Fett. I think this would have actually worked much better as just season 3 of The Mandalorian and subtitle it The Book of Boba Fett, where, okay, and come out front and say, okay, first couple episodes, we're going to focus on Boba Fett and Fennec Shand, but to give Mando a little break, because Pedro Pascal's really in right now. He was in Wonder Woman 1980, whatever, that no one liked, and then he's off filming The Last of Us TV series for HBO. So obviously he's he was a well-known actor before, but now he's even more well-known, so a lot of people want him. So we're going to give him a couple episode break. We're going to focus on Boba Fett because we like Boba Fett, but then we will, of course, swing back around to that story. And, I think they even could have, if they had included this in like the, you pull up The Mandalorian on Disney+, season 1, season 2, season 3, and then like, instead of it being called season 3, it's called the Book of Boba Fett because, like, for those of you that also watch my Ninjago content, you probably know this. When you pull up Ninjago on Netflix, it doesn't say season 1, season 2, season 3, season 4. It has the names of the seasons: Rise of the Snakes, whatever the heck we call season 2, because it has like 3 different names: Rebooted, Tournament of Elements, etc., etc., etc. I think that would have worked if they had gone Mandalorian season 1, Mandalorian season 2, season 3, the Book of Boba Fett. And then when Din Djarin suddenly, is the focus of an entire episode without Boba even appearing in episode 5 of this season, I don't think anyone would have batted an eyelash. It's like, oh, okay, we're wrapping back around to Din. Awesome. We'll be eager to see Boba again and see how the story of this season wraps up. And then this episode, where it was a little bit more of an even split, where you did have a lot of elements from the Mandalorian in it, but you also had a lot of elements of Book of Boba Fett continuing the story. We got a little bit more of the Pikes. Everyone's gearing up for war. All of that. It all just kind of, I feel like, melds better instead of going, this is the Book of Boba Fett. It's a TV show about Boba Fett, and as and being told that, you kind of assume, rightfully so, I feel like, that you can correctly assume that this is going to be a show kind of solely about Boba Fett, and with some like Fennec Shand on the side a little bit, and the characters he comes into contact with. Now, technically, yes, Din is one of those characters he comes into contact with, but you don't expect one of those characters to have an entire episode dedicated to them when you only have 7 episodes. Because these shows cost, they're multi-million dollar productions. They're not as expensive as the features, of course, but they still are really expensive to make these. But it's Disney. They're Scrooge McDuck up in their money bin, just swimming around in gold. So it's like they can afford it. So I just really kind of wish that they had called this, the Mandalorian season 3, and because except for Boba Fett taking over as the main character from episode 1 to 4, I don't really feel like the tone of the show really changed. The format certainly didn't change. The biggest change was that they turned the title green, retyped it, and put in a new theme song. Otherwise, it was just more Mandalorian. So it's kind of weird how last week and this week I'm like, oh boy, this is Boba Fett show. Why is he not in his own show? Well, it was already pretty much the Mandalorian, but with Boba Fett instead. So I feel like a lot of this griping, complaining online would have been averted if they had just slid this into the season 3 slot of the Mandalorian on Disney Plus, and just left the subtitle there. It's like. Or even maybe gone back and go, okay, let's retroactively rename each season of The Mandalorian. Like season 1 could have been Discovering the Child. Season 2 could be The Search for Jedi or something like that. And then you get to the Book of Boba Fett. And then chapter 4 is, the Reclaiming Mandalore or something like that. I don't know. We'll see where the story goes moving forward. But so I feel like they kind of shot themselves in the foot by going, this is Boba Fett's show. We all knew it was a spinoff of The Mandalorian, but with how heavily focused the last 2 episodes have been focused on Din Djarin and that aspect of the story, I feel like it is very jarring to suddenly go, oh, it's no longer Boba Fett's show. So if they just kind of worded that, but got the message out a little better, then I feel like some of this confusion or surprise or disappointment could have been avoided, and we could focus on what has been pretty good storytelling overall, because expectations would have been managed better otherwise. Because if you instead say, because at this point, going back to my discussion from a couple weeks ago when we were talking about episode 2, at this point I do kind of doubt the Tuscans are coming back. I'm not going to rule it out completely, but I'm like, well, we didn't see the body of the kid or the lady, so they could still be out there. But it's been a while. We're done. It seems like we're totally done with the flashbacks, which is what I was kind of worried about when Boba got out of that tank and the little droid said, "Congratulations, Mr. Fett, you are now healed," or whatever. So I don't know if the Tuscans are going to come back. And if they aren't, then yeah, I am kind of more sliding into that camp of, yeah, maybe they were a little fridged. But when you only have 7 episodes, and if this is season 3 of The Mandalorian, and it's not Boba Fett's own TV show, then I feel like the complaints of, oh, the Tuscans got fridged or whatever, I think that changes from that to instead being, well, that was maybe a little predictable, but Boba only has 4 episodes of focus here, and then before we move back on to Din. So, you know what? With the time that they had, it was actually done pretty well. I don't know. For some people would complain either way, because people on the internet, I feel like, just enjoy complaining more than they actually enjoying things. But for me, it's definitely a fine line. It's like, yeah, I can definitely enjoy something and acknowledge its problems and not really be bothered by that. Look at the Transformers live action films 1 through 4 for me, at least. But then it also comes to a point where it's like, okay, no, you do have to kind of critique something when it could have been done better. Transformers 5, just to tie it in, to finish off that analogy. So it definitely wouldn't have appeased everyone for sure, because the internet, it can just be a very complaining place. But for a lot of other people, I feel like, just positioning it better as season 3 of Mando, and Boba's going to be the focus for the first couple episodes, and then we're moving back onto the main story. I feel like that would have just gone over a teensy bit better. I understand why they went, it's Boba Fett's own TV show, because, man, I feel like that, it's like, because they're not out yet, but give it 2 months or something like that, and I'm sure I'll be able to go out to Target or wherever and find a t-shirt that's just the logo, or it's Boba's helmet, and underneath it just says the Book of Boba Fett. Being able to sell that, totally get it. So I do kind of question if that was a Disney Lucasfilm marketing decision to have it kind of be this, to have it really be its own show rather than it just be another season of The Mandalorian, or if that was really Jon Favreau going, I really want this to be its own show, and then him just kind of accidentally getting lost in the weeds. I guess we'll kind of find out next episode, see how everything wraps up, if it wraps up, because I don't know how they're going to wrap this up in 44 minutes without it feeling a little bit rushed. I suppose it's possible that it could be like a 2-hour episode, because that's the nice thing about streaming, is that these episodes can be just pretty much whatever the length you want or need them to be. So who knows? Maybe the next episode's going to be an hour and a half. Maybe it'll be 2 hours. Maybe it'll be 25 minutes. And it's going to leave us on a cliffhanger. We got to wait until the real Mando season 3, in August or September or something. And they're like, it's coming sooner than you think or something. I doubt that, but maybe possible. So yeah. But yeah. So all that aside, like I said, going back to my original point, they've shot themselves in the foot a little bit by kind of making it their own show, and maybe they should have just positioned it as Mandalorian Season 3, subtitled The Book of Boba Fett. But for what this is, for contributing to the larger world of Star Wars, man, was this awesome. Like I said, I cried during this episode, and that's not a totally difficult thing to get me to do when it comes to Star Wars, but it is usually pretty notable whenever it does happen. And I will say, a lot of those moments when it does happen, at least in the last couple of years, it's always involving Ahsoka. Dave Filoni, you just love pulling at our heartstrings. So, surprise, surprise, Dave Filoni directed this episode, co-wrote it with Jon Favreau. The only episode so far this season that has been written by another person besides Jon. And then, surprise, surprise, look at all the stuff that Dave included. And it all felt pretty natural to me. Because, that's one of the things where I think you see people that aren't up to date on everything, and they see the, oh, look at everyone being surprised by this character, look at everyone being surprised by that character. I can kind of see the complaints of, it's like, they're just throwing characters in because they're recognizable. It's like, well, that is an underlying factor of it, yes, but it's also because they make sense to show up. Like, Cad Bane showing up in this episode made sense, but it didn't have to be Cad Bane. It could have been Embo, it could have been Dengar. It's like they had a whole list of characters they could have chosen from. So I think, whenever they do stuff like this, it's always who would make sense, but also what would be new and exciting at the same time. Because I don't know also, so what makes sense for the character, like Dengar just showing up with his DLT-19, just strolling into town to face down Cobb Vanth. I mean, it would have been a, oh, cool, Dengar moment, but it wouldn't have been the everyone flipping out because you see the silhouette in the dark, in the desert, And it's funny, I think, initially we're like, oh, who's the stranger emerging from the desert? As the title of the episode implies. Is it Cobb Vanth? Is he going to ride into town and help out? Is that who it is? And then near the end of the episode, you see this stranger walking through the desert. Very Clint Eastwood-like. And it's like, oh, who is this? And, he's far enough away that he really is just kind of this vague shape in the distance. But then he's a little closer, and you see the overall silhouette and the hat, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's Cad Bane in live action. And sure enough, he strolls into town, and he keeps his brim low, and he's just, it's like, I'd be careful sticking my nose, where I stick my nose if I were you, which is funny to come out of a Duro's mouth, considering he doesn't really have a nose. And it's like, I don't think I caught your name. And he doesn't ever give his name. For all the people of Freetown care, he's the man with no name. But, he just raises his head, and you see those red eyes. And the pointy teeth, and he just looks scary. I've seen some people saying that it's like, oh, he needs to be, his hat needs to be bigger, and his skin needs to be bluer. That doesn't really bother me. I could definitely see that, considering how old Bane is at this point in the timeline, I could definitely see it. Well, I mean, his skin has just gotten lighter as he's gotten older. And the hat thing, I know people are attached to the comically large hat, the really just stupidly big hat that he wears. But I think for transitioning him into live action, I feel like that what they did was probably the best move. Because first of all, when you look at his design in the clone, which is awesome, by the way, I mean, that is just a ridiculously cool design, that original season 1 to 3 Cad Bane design. I'm less enthused by his season 4 Obi-Wan Undercover arc design, but I know that he didn't necessarily have his regular stuff on him, and this is just like him making do to look as good as he can under the circumstances, because he kind of had to go undercover in prison and everything. But and then his Bad Batch design is like squarely in the middle. It's good, but it's not his original design because I was missing the flappy coat. But that original Clone Wars design is very cartoony. It was definitely this is an animated show, and we're going to get away with making some more cartoonishly looking characters, even if this is supposed to kind of be set in reality a little bit. It's kind of like some of the stuff that they did in Star Wars Rebels, like with Zeb, for instance. Like I think there's a reason we haven't seen any Lasat in live action. And it's only been in animation and comics and stuff, because I don't know how you would do a Lasat in, like, say, the Book of Boba Fett or any of these shows that they're doing on Disney Plus, because it's like, yeah, they have these huge budgets, but I don't think you could do a puppet. I don't think you could do a suit because of the legs. I think it would have to be CG, and that would be very, very, very expensive. So the only time you could probably do a Lasat would be like in one of the movies. And even then, I don't think you'd want him to be one of the main characters. It would be like, if it's Zeb or even another Lasat. So, but Rebels being an animated show, you can do kind of whatever you want. So it's one of those. So Cad Bane, his original design is very much that. It's like, it's an animated show. We can kind of get away with stretching the edge of reality of what's actually feasible. And stuff like that. So the hat just being stupidly comically large for especially the first 3 seasons, I think fit for sure there, but I don't know. I feel like in live action, even though now I will say I wish the hat was a teensy bit bigger. It was a tad small, but overall not bad. I just like, yeah, you could have gone a little bigger, but I know why you did what you did. Because I mean, just imagine for us, older Star Wars fans at this point, which I can't believe I'm saying that. I'm now 24. Like those of us that have grown up on Clone Wars or were older when Clone Wars came out and watched it with younger siblings or children or stuff like that. For those, for those of us that are aware of Cad Bane, we saw him first in animation because, that's where he's only been that in comics up until 2 days ago. So, us being familiar with that, I feel like seeing the large hat, we would have, the stupidly large hat, we would have gone, oh yeah, Cad Bane, look at that large hat, we love it. Where people that had never met Cad Bane before, I think they would have gone, well, they probably would have reacted like they're reacting now, like, ooh, this is a cool character, I want to know more about him. That's a really stupidly large hat, though. I mean, look at how wide it is. I mean, how is he standing up with that thing on his head? So I know why they made it smaller. It's totally we're just trying to be a little bit more realistic. Also, probably whatever actor that they put under all those prosthetics, that they then CG'd over anyway. I'm pretty sure. That was probably it's just one of those things of the transition from animation to live action. You got to make some concessions. Just for the physical nature of, and that's the whole reason that Ahsoka's montrals are shorter, is that it was done just for like I think Dave said it was for like stunt work and stuff. Now I think he's also said something later where it was for that, and also so they wouldn't be distracting because because it's live action, they adhere to the real life physics and everything, and then you can't actually control them like you could in animation because you control everything in animation. So it'd be like distracting with all of them just kind of swinging around down there by her knees or whatever, however long they'd be canonically by that point. So it's like, it's like I discussed with Mandalorian, making them shorter was probably the better call. And I think the same thing can be said here for Bane's hat. I think he just looked really good. Actually, my biggest problem with Bane's design is I think his fingers are just a little too fat. Because in Clone Wars, he had the very large pads, but they were still long and lanky. Because I think they have someone, they have an actor in a suit and everything, with prosthetics on it for this. It's they have to give them closer to human proportions, so the fingers aren't as long and lanky in live action, so the fingers just come off more as fat than they do long and lanky, which is large pads. So that's actually my biggest complaint with Cad Bane, is his fingers just look too fat. So yeah, but no, it was really awesome to see Cad Bane. That was sweet. But he wasn't the only returning Star Wars character to pop up in this episode. Of course, we also saw Ahsoka again, like I mentioned. Seeing her again was cool. Rosario Dawson's now second appearance as the character, obviously keeping her kind of in our minds for when that Ahsoka show eventually comes out. It's a genuine surprise that she showed up, though. I kind of wish that they had done this with Mandalorian season 2, where Bo-Katan just says, go to the Force Moon of Caladan, and there you will find a Jedi. I kind of wish she had said that, but I get why they said there you will find Ahsoka Tano. And those that knew, they would know anyway. So, and anyone that didn't know Ahsoka, that would still be a new character to them like it was. So, that's really just such a teensy little nitpick that doesn't even matter. But the surprise of the stick break, Mando whips out his blaster pistol and he goes, "Oh, I didn't expect to see you here." And it's Ahsoka just leaning on a tree smiling. It's like, "Oh, hey, Ahsoka's here! Awesome, this is cool." So I really enjoyed that. But speaking of sieging over faces, we also had more Luke Skywalker. And it was really cool to see Luke with a much better looking face this time. So they hired. It was interesting because it made the rounds on the internet that they hired one of the deep fakers that improved the ending of The Mandalorian season 2 and just put it on YouTube. It's like, hey, here's how I did it better. And everyone's like, "Oh, that's so much better." Then they hired him. So I hope that they hired him with the purpose of actually working on this episode. And I think it's maybe. I mean, I didn't check the credits for his name or anything, but I think that's probably why they hired him to work on this and just to do other things for them. Obviously, because you don't hire someone to do one thing and then never do anything again. It's like, all right, let's have you work on some other stuff now. But I did notice, I don't know if any of you guys noticed this, but I did notice that a lot of Luke's dialogue was taken from off screen, where it's a shot of someone else's reaction to what he's saying, or it's an over-the-shoulder shot, or they deliberately went through and jumped through, or it's a shot from far away. They deliberately did a lot of moments where Luke didn't have to move his mouth, which I think was also maybe one of the hang-ups people had about his appearance at the end of season 2 of Mando, where it's like, the face looked good at times depending on the angle and the lighting of where he was standing and how he was positioning himself. But then when he started to move, like, the whole thing fell apart. When the lips started moving, that's when everything fell apart. So I did notice that they were very, very deliberate in making sure whenever Luke talked, we did see him talk on occasion, but there were a lot of shots where his mouth wasn't moving at all, but we were hearing dialogue coming from him but we were focusing on something else. So I see you out there, Dave. I know what you guys did. You didn't get that past me. So I don't know if anyone else caught that, but because I certainly did. But yeah, so I guess I've been going for a while here, and there's not really too much left to talk about. I don't think. Just the last thing to cover is like I said, the scene that made me cry. It's you probably know the one. It's Luke Skywalker and Ahsoka Tano on screen together. Man, I'm getting kind of emotional. Gosh. I didn't think that was going to happen. Honestly, the moment in the episode and just now, where it's like even talking about it, I'm like, oh gosh. Because it was bad enough because I thought that they were going to do like a strategic R2 calls, and it's like, oh, R2, oh, I love that little droid so much. He's just such a little troll, where he rolls up all the other little scavenger droids or whatever, they're putting together Luke's first Jedi temple, and R2 communicates with him, and it's like, okay, hey, can you build Mando here a bench, because I'm just going to take a nap and totally troll him. I love R2-D2 so much. It's like, it's just so funny. But, I thought that they were going to do a strategic maneuvery thing where Luke and Ahsoka are never on screen together. Does Luke even know who Ahsoka is? Does she respond to R2's call? And she knows who Luke is, but she's not ready to meet him yet. Are they going to save that for the Ahsoka show or what have you? But no, they have her walk up, and Luke's just like, oh, hey. It's like, he's not surprised by her. He's not like, who are you? He knows who she is. She knows who he is. And so I was already kind of like, oh, when Mando's like, I didn't expect to see you here. And she goes, I'm an old friend of the family, and puts her hand on top of R2's dome. But then they're watching Grogu play with the remote, and Luke says what, and it's like, honestly, I forget what Luke said, because that's not even really the thing that matters, but for the purpose of what's making me emotional. But then she says, you're so much like your father. See, even thinking about it, I'm getting all torn up about it. Dave Filoni. And this is definitely why this was the only episode of the season so far, maybe of the entire season, co-written between Dave and John. And John Favreau didn't take sole writing duties, is because it was dealing with Ahsoka. So of course, you give Dave some writing duties when it comes to writing Ahsoka, because that is his character, and he knows how to write her. And I feel like the Ahsoka show is just going to be me crying. My reviews when that comes out, it's just going to be me crying into a microphone for a half hour. It's like, yeah, stuff happened. It's like, you're so much like your father. Has she met Leia? How are they going to do? Are they going to do young Leia too? It's like, oh gosh, Ahsoka Tano knowing who Luke Skywalker is. I mean, that's not surprising, because, hearing about the hero of the rebellion who destroyed the Death Star and defeated Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine. Of course, word would eventually get around to her if she's around in that time frame. But then eventually meeting him, having that closure and probably hearing from him that Anakin came back. He wasn't totally gone, because the last time she would have seen him was during their duel at the end of Season 2 of Rebels. Revenge is not the Jedi way, then I will avenge his death. That's probably the last time she ever saw Darth Vader or Anakin Skywalker. And eventually she meets his son. I'm sorry. And he gets to tell her that at the end, he did the right thing. He came back. Anakin Skywalker was not gone. He came back. It's just, Obviously, we have not seen the initial meeting. We have not seen that conversation play out, but I'm sure it's happened. And if we get that as a flashback in the Ahsoka show or something, or we eventually see that put to screen, or even in print, in a comic or a book or something, I am just gonna have a meltdown. I'm really surprised. I did not think I was going to do this today. Obviously I knew I was going to do the review, but I didn't think I'd be getting emotional over this. Like I said, despite the weirdness of it being Boba's show and he's barely in it, that doesn't matter, because this is good Star Wars. This is good storytelling. This thing being built up for over a decade. This thing we didn't know we needed. Adding to the story in new and interesting ways. Gosh, 2007, we're coming out with a movie based in the Clone Wars, and there will be a TV series to follow, and Anakin Skywalker has a snippy 14-year-old Padawan. To think that here I am, now, and me and a lot of other people too, are now being, it's like, I can remember the internet reaction at the time, being in 5th grade and going, oh, wow, people sure are mean I didn't realize people could be mean on the internet. And it's like, why does Anakin Skywalker need to have a Padawan? What could this possibly add to the story of Star Wars? You don't know, man. You didn't know. You had no clue what it could add. And it's like, this is one of the things it could add. So I think I need to wrap it there before I just totally break down. So yeah, that's been my review of the most recent episode of the Book of Boba Fett. I'm excited to see where this all kind of leads to next episode, if we're going to get another season, or if it's just going to lead into Mando season 3, excuse me, which would then just further prove my point. This should have just been labeled as season 3 of Mando, but again, I'll save the very last of that conversation for next time to see how everything wraps up and what plans they are going to be teasing going forward. And hopefully I won't be as emotional next time, but we'll find out. So thank you for joining me on this Fett Friday. And I will see you guys next week for the season finale. So thank you for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that great stuff. Remember to follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Those links are in the description below, and I will see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.